Habakkuk this morning. That will do. And we're at chapter 1. The burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. The word for burden there is as strong a word as you can get. And here's what he said: "O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? I even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save." Man, he's saying to the Lord, you'll not hear me, and you'll not save. Why dost thou show me iniquity and cause me to behold grievance? For spoiling and violence are before me, and there are they that raise up strife and contention. Therefore the law was slacked, and judgment doth never go forth, for the wicked doth compass about the righteous. Therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. Now it's God's turn. Behold ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days which ye will not believe, though it be told you. For, lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses also are swifter than the leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from far. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity of the sand. They shall scoff at the kings and the princes, and be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. Then shall his mind change, and he shall pass over and offend, imputing his power unto his God. Would that be Allah? Art thou not from everlasting, O God? Habakkuk comes again. Art thou not from everlasting, O Lord? My God, mine Holy One, we shall not die. O Lord, thou hast ordained them for judgment, and O mighty God, thou hast established them for correction. Thou art of pure eyes, and to behold evil, and canst not look on iniquity. Wherefore lookest thou upon them, and deal treacherously, and holdest thy tongue, when the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he, and maketh men as the fishes of the sea, as the creeping things that have no ruler over them? They take up all of them with the angle, they catch them in their net, and gather them in their drag. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. Therefore they sacrifice unto their net, and burn incense unto their drag, because by them their portion is fat, and their meat plenteous. So shall they therefore empty their net, and not spare continually to slay the nations. And we know that God will bless to us the public reading of his own precious word. This morning, and for a number of Sunday mornings in May, I want to call your attention to this short prophecy of Habakkuk. There are 3 chapters with 56 verses, and they're a microcosm and an example of the state of the things nationally, spiritually, morally, and politically in the nation. And I have entitled this short series, Testings in Troubled Times. Testings in Troubled Times. Across the world this morning, there's the faithful remnant of God's chosen people. And they are under fierce attack and persecution. And the day has come. If we stand for the Lord the way we should, in our homes, in our workplace, in our schools and universities, and in our churches, we will be subject to the wiles of the devil and the wrath of man in a way unprecedented before. We are in the last days. 'Tis time for the men and women of God to stand up and be counted. Because what has come to other Christians will come to us shortly. If we are living in Habakkuk's day, and I believe we are, we need help. And we need it soon. Now, I suggest to you that there's no other prophet, minor or major, that points up the answers to the situation that we are in, both in the church and in our nation, as Habakkuk does. But thank God it's not all doom and gloom. And if you can hold on the first 2 messages, we're going to come to real blessing when we come to the end. Now, Habakkuk differs from all the other prophets in 3 ways. He's a peculiar sort of boy, this. He's an exclusive man, Habakkuk. He differs, first of all, in his pedigree. We don't know anything about him. We don't know anything about his mother, or his father, his grandfather. We don't know what tribe he came from. We don't know what age he was. We don't know what education he had. Like Elijah, he appears and disappears. We don't know his pedigree. And we don't know the place from where he came from either. What city, what mountain, what town, we don't know. Whether he was a herdsman like Amos, a shepherd like Moses, or a scholar like Isaiah, we don't know anything about that, about his place. Nor do we know the period in which he prophesied. Some think that it was at the time of Jeremiah, after the death of the great revivalist Josiah. Some think that he is prophesying and speaking then. We don't know that. But his main peculiarity above all those things and above all the other prophets was that he mostly prayed, not prophesied or preached. He didn't talk to men about God, he talked to God about men. He was more a priest than he was a prophet. Now, the first thing that we see about him, if you glance your eyes on verse 1, and I hope you have your Bibles open, the first thing that we see about this man, he was burdened. He was burdened. What else does it matter about him? Thank God we know some things about him that will make our ears tingle and maybe warm our hearts and stir us up. We'll not feed much, on his background. We'll not feed much on his parentage or his characterization. but we will feed on the Word. He was burdened. Now, the word burdened is to weigh down with a heavy load and struggle continually to carry it. Paul talks about groaning under the burden. Could I stop a wee minute? Maybe there's some of you here watching, listening to me this morning, and you're struggling under some weight, some burden or another. Maybe it's to do with your health, maybe with your family, maybe with your job, maybe it's to do with your exams or relationships or something. Well, this man had a tremendous burden upon him. Can I say to you this morning, try your best to cast it onto the Lord. The burden that Habakkuk did see, the word burden is judgment. Actually, it's the judgment of God upon his people and the nation and Jerusalem that weighs him down. This is not a personal burden in that sense. It is a spiritual burden, a national burden. The sin is breaking his heart because he's a godly man. My friend, we haven't many burdened ministers and preachers today. Now, the name Habakkuk means to embrace, to cling, to hold tight. Luther said about him, about his name, it's like a mother holding her first baby when the baby's crying. Well, I'm going to go a wee bit further than that, and I'm going to say this. It's like a mother holding a sick and dying child, and she'll not let it go. Because he can see the nation, and he can see the church, as it were, and the people of God, he can see it dying. Oh, the grip. Oh, the love. Oh, the embrace. Oh, the tears. His name means to cling. I suggest to you this is where his burden came from. He was close to the heart of God. And the closer we get to the mind and to the heart and to the will of God, the greater our burden should be. Because I tell you, he is a burdened heart this morning. Oh, I tell you, when his eyes scan throughout this whole world, Jehovah is burdened this morning. And the closer we get to the heart of God and the mind of God, oh, for the eyes of God. Oh, for the heart of God. Oh, for the mind of God. This man winced and wrestled under it as he saw the child dying. What did he see? Well, we read it this morning, and you take time, some time to go through what he saw. Violence, iniquity, immorality, lawlessness, drunkenness. Crushed him daily. Weighed him down with a burden that he couldn't carry. Oh, how far removed we are from Habakkuk. I wonder, are you clinging this morning? Are you holding tight this morning? Are you embracing him this morning? Did you embrace him before you came out? Or have we got so far away from him that we don't hear his heartbeat anymore? Oh, for a closer walk with God. Oh, to hear that still small voice again. So the first thing we see about him, he was burdened. Secondly, we see that he questioned. Look at verse 2. "O Lord, how long? How long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? Even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save?" Let me say to you, you can't carry a weight like this too long without an answer before you'll start to question. Are you questioning this morning? You spent last week interrogating him? For this was an interrogatory prayer. Have you? "O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou shalt not hear?" Some scholars believe, with the background that they can muster up of this man, some say that he called and cried for 20 years. Well, that's smart in some of us. We have a wee burden and a wee trial for a week or a fortnight, and everybody knows about it but God. But you go around chatting to everybody about it. 20 years? This is not only an intercessory prayer, this is an interrogatory prayer. He's down to the very wire. His back's up against it. He can take no more of it. And he calls out, "Lord, how long will it be until you do something?" And I can tell you that there's not one of you in this meeting this morning, but sometime or another you haven't said the very same, and maybe saying it right now. "How long, Lord, have I to go on? How long has this sickness? How long has this trial? How long has this trouble to go on? I can't stick what's going on any longer. Lord, why are you not doing something about the sorrow and the violence and the strife and the lawlessness?" Oh, that God would lay a burden on some of us like this. I tell you, if you'd a dozen men like this, I tell you, God would hear. Because he heard him. He heard him. Now you just think about this morning. Just think of this man, Habakkuk. Just think of what he's saying here to the eternal, almighty, all-powerful God. Well, if he is 20 years, if he's 10 years, even if he's 5 years, even if he's 2 years, he's weighed down with this burden day and night of what's going on around him, the state of the church, the state of Jerusalem, the state of the people, the awful sin that he's seeing, the awful things that he's seeing in God's people. And he says, "Lord, how long will it be? How long will it be until you hear, and how long will it be until you save?" Some of you are praying for your children for years. "Lord, will you soon save them?" Well, he hasn't saved them yet. And you might have to wait a wee bit longer. But turning this round the other way, let me say this morning that the scoffers and the world enjoy this. Out there this morning in the world, drinking and carousing and reading their Sunday papers and carrying on with their sin and their immorality and their iniquity, and they're laughing at the people of God, and they're saying, "Where is their God? Where is their God?" Where's this God that these Christians are worshiping this morning? Why are the children dying with cancer? Why are the thousands killed in the earthquake in Nepal? Where is their God? And if that's a God of love, I want nothing to do with that. H.G. Wells said one time, if I could get God, I'd spit in his face. Well, let me tell him, and let me tell you this morning that men did spit in his face. And dogs are barking at the moon from time immemorial, but the moon still shines. Where is this God of yours? Where is this God of the Christians? All you hear about fighting in churches. And they're talking about revival. But it's not only the world that is, God's people's at it too. Northern Ireland's full of backsliders this morning. Full of. I tell you, there's more backsliders than there is front sliders. Where's this God that told us that was going to revive and he's going to come and he's going to bless and he's going to heal and he's going to save? Where is it? So we prayed for years and we prayed for years, and I used to go to prayer meeting and pray and pray and pray, and nothing has happened. No. I pray, I tithe, I work, I've done much for the Lord as any man, and look at the state I'm in. Look at my family. Look at my home. Look at my health. Look at my children. My friend, this is reality. This is reality. You get Psalm 73 and read it. And it'll open all this up to you this morning when you read it. The psalmist says, my feet were almost gone. I well nigh slipped, and when I looked at the prosperity of the wicked, I couldn't take it. Here am I serving God and living for God, and the wicked were prospering, and they were being blessed, and their homes were being blessed, and their houses and their families, and here am I. And I'm trying to get hold of God, and I can't get hold of him, and everything's coming against me. And then he says this, until I went into the sanctuary. But when I went in before God, I saw that it was them was on the slippery slope. Here's a man burdened. Here's a man questioned. Here's a man frustrated. Here's a man puzzled. But here's a man answered. Verse 5. Look at verse 5. Behold ye among the heathen. So God's speaking to him now. God's answering him now. So God does hear our prayers. And don't you dictate to him how long it'll take him to answer them. And don't dictate what way he answers them when he does. For this is the trouble Habakkuk got into. God heard every cry. He heard every sob. He knew everything that was going on. And then one moment, hear ye. That's down there among the heathen. He says, I'm going to do a work, and that in the Hebrew is, I am doing a work. So God's already working. He's already working this morning. In that wee trial of yours, he's already working. And the reason that he hasn't answered is known to him. He's working. He's working in His way. He's leading and guiding in His way. He doesn't want you where you are. He wants you somewhere else. He wants you to do something else. He wants you to think in a different way. Hear ye among the heathen. He says, I'm going to do a marvelous thing. And it's going to be in your days. Do you notice that now? In your day. In your day. God's going to do something in your day, in my day. Well, you need to do it quick, for I haven't very long to go. In your day. Which ye will not believe, though I told you. Maybe that's why He didn't tell him, because He knew you wouldn't believe it. Boys, if somebody would have told me 45 years ago, when I was driving drunk and lying in a Garda cell down in Donegal, someone would have come in and said to me, you know, in a few years' time you're going to be a preacher of the gospel. Wouldn't have believed him. And you look in your life this morning, and I'll tell you, God has done things in your life and in your home and in your family that 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago you wouldn't have believed it. You wouldn't have believed it. But I sort of think, you know, that God didn't tell Habakkuk because He didn't want to wound him anymore. God's loving and God's gracious, because what He's going to tell him is going to be not good. It's not going to be the revival that He's waiting on. Maybe He did come after Josiah. Maybe He did hear of the mighty move in Josiah's day. And He sees the decline of the God's people. And they were in an awful state at this time, God's people. But God's going to do something in His way, in His time. And He tells Habakkuk what it is. Verse 6. He says, I'm going to raise up the Chaldeans. What? The Babylonian Chaldeans? These wicked, evil people, the worst evil people on the face of the earth. Do you know, in less than 20 years, they had conquered 6 nations, including Egypt. These men had no mercy. They had a scorched earth policy. That's why at the end Habakkuk says, oh, if the fig tree doesn't blossom and the calf's not in the stall, he knows that these people are going to come in. They're going to kill all life. Everything that's living, plants, birds, they keep nothing. These are the most despicable of people. And they have no mercy. And at this moment, down on the banks of the Euphrates, this great army is ready to move, and God's preparing them to move. Where? Upon His people. He says, I'm working with them. Habakkuk, listen, you lift your eyes onto the nations. It's not just your wee problem at your front door and in your house and in Jerusalem. It's bigger than all this. We can get caught up in our own wee petty things, can't we? Our own church, our own district, our own family. We need to lift up our eyes and see the big picture this morning, because let me tell you, God's working. He's working. Well, the only thing that I can compare this to, that whenever this man heard it, whenever God said from His own mouth, I'm going to raise up the Chaldeans, the bitter and hasty nations, and they shall march through the breadth of the land to possess it well. And they did. The only thing that I can compare that is to God speaking this morning clearly and positively and saying, I'm going to raise up the Al-Qaeda and the ISIS and the wicked, evil Muslims that are taking the heads of children, that are burning and destroying all before them. I'm going to raise them up in England and in Northern Ireland. That would change the tune, wouldn't it? I tell you that Habakkuk was sorry, I believe, that he ever prayed, ever asked him. I'm going to raise up the Chaldeans, and they're going to come into Jerusalem, and they're going to slaughter all before them, and I'm going to allow them to do it. For I'm raising them up to do it. Because that's what he says in verse 6. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans. I tell you, God sets up one and down another. I can't understand God at times. How could I? How could I? And he describes them. And he describes them mostly with their speed. He says their horses are swifter than leopards. They're fiercer than the evening wolf. Oh, the evening wolf is a hungry wolf. And he says their horses are going to be swifter than the leopards. Horses and leopards and wolves and eagles, all to do with speed. And they're going to move quickly. I don't know what's going to happen at this general election on Thursday. I don't know. And I don't know what's going to happen in the assembly elections here in our province, for politics never enters into this pulpit. But let me tell you this. We could be in for a big surprise. God is preparing, perhaps just at this moment, a government in England that will bring us to our very knees. God answered him, but not in his way. He says they're going to come, these evil, wicked people, with speed upon the nation, and there's nothing will stop it. So what did Habakkuk do then? What did he do? Well, he started to cry and pray again. Verse 12. And he says in verse 11, before we go on to verse, he says in verse 11, these people are going to triumph in such a way that there's coming a day when they'll give praise to their God. They'll be out on the streets of England and they'll be praising Allah. Allah. They will. Because I can tell you this, every week in England, 2 churches are closed and 2 mosques are open. And here's a quote from Gordon Brown, the ex-Prime Minister: Islam is the answer to your economic salvation. Here's a retired Muslim judge said recently, whom the Queen knighted, the day is coming when England will worship Allah. It could well be that we'll wake up on Friday morning and with speed after that, we'll have a Muslim-dominated nation. And if it's not them, it'll be the Sodomites who'll be running it, because it seems to me that every political party, not only in the nation, nationally, but provincially, every one of them are pandering to the Sodomites. And God help us. God help us when unionists are looking for the Sodomites to vote for them. Well, I'll get them. This is a timely message. This is a word from God. So what does he do? He prays. In verse 12, he says, "Art thou not, O God, from everlasting?" In other words, these boys are only leaves in God's wind. Lord, these boys are only for a wee minute, but you're from eternity. Now, watch the way he pleads with God here. He says, Lord, you're everlasting. Mine, we shall not die. You can't destroy us, Lord. You said you covenant with your people. Well, he's getting no answers to this, because the Lord God has already stated what he's going to do. And as we close now soon, as we close, he accepted it. He says, Lord, thou art everlasting. You're the Holy One. You're holy. Thou art pure eyes to behold evil and iniquity. How can you watch? How can you watch these wicked, evil people coming in and destroying our land and our homes? 20 years, Lord, I've been crying that you would root them out, that you'd come and that you'd bless our people. And now things are worse. Well, sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. Worse. And they're going to be worse. But let me tell you, when you read on and as you study, you read this as we come to preach it the Sunday after next again. When you read it, let me tell you that God's going to deal with these Chaldeans, these Babylon. God deals with them and blesses his people again. But he brings them through this. Why? Well, there's a whole lot of reasons why. Look at the way he argues here in verse 13. Thou art of pure eyes to behold evil. He can't look on iniquity. Wherefore lookest thou upon these that deal treachery and holdest the tongue? You're not saying anything. Lord, why are you not saying anything? Why are you not doing anything? When the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he. See that wee phrase? How can you allow the wicked men to devour the righteous people of God? How can you do it? Well, I'm going to have a shot at telling you why this morning as I close. You see, these Babylonians never sinned against light. They never had the commandments. They never had the covenants and sacrifices of God Almighty. They never knew what it was to hear from heaven. They never knew what it was to have the manna and the quails and to drink the water from the rock. They never knew what it was to have the cloud covering them every morning and the pillar of fire every night. They never knew what it was to be under the protective hand of a loving and an almighty God. But his people do. His people do. And they've turned and they've rebelled and they've forgotten God. But God, I'll bring them back. It'll not be with a revival. I'll bring them back with the sword. I'll bring them back with the aggressors. I'll put them to their knees. Maybe he'll do that. Maybe he'll take the unionists and he'll humble them. And it'd be about time too. Maybe he'll put us to pray, to cry. I'm not finished, but that's going to do me this morning. What did he do when there was no voice from God after that? He went up into the watchtower, into the rampart. And he says, I'll go up and I'll see what God's going to do. He believed God. And he says, I'm going to watch. The watchtower could see for miles. They could see the cloud of dust going up when the enemy was coming. He says, I'm going up to watch. Because God said he'll do it, and he does. And Habakkuk knew that. So things didn't go the way Habakkuk thought they'd go. Sure, they didn't. Nor are they going for you the way you thought they'd go. Habakkuk prayed and cried for 20 years for God to do something. And then when God said he would do something, he prayed that he wouldn't do it. Don't you be crying and praying to God to do something in your life, and when he comes to do it, say, no, I don't want it that way. No, you not dictate. You don't dictate. You're praying for me, to answer you, to move, to deal, to deliver, to help you, to do something in the situation. All right, I'll do it. I'm going to do it. I'm working at it. I'm not going to do it tonight because you're not ready for it yet. What you have got to do, and we're going to see this the next time, what you have got to do, get down from the watchtower. You know, my friend, it's not all in prayer. He says, get down from the watchtower and get it up on the walls and put it out to the people that he that runs will see it. Make it known, proclaim it, tell it, that judgment is coming. Judgment is coming. To nowadays, he'd probably get it on Facebook, get it up into the internet, get it wherever you tell the people that judgment is coming. Come down, Habakkuk. And tell them the Chaldeans are coming. That's the one word will put them to their knees. Oh, may God help us this morning. May God wound us this morning. And may we give praise to him who knows how to handle things better than we do. So cling on. Hold tight. Don't let go. For it's coming in an appointed time. And it will surely come. And it will not tarry.